What's up, y'all? Yeah, good morning. We did the big hoo-ah last week, man. We got to see if we're all good this week. So on the count of three, we're going to do hoo-ah. You ready? 1, 2, hoo-ah! That's right. You're all present and accounted for. I love it. I love it. We have been hot and heavy in this sermon series on We Are a Battleship. And the thing I like about this week is I get to share the message and the teaching with my sweet wife. And Miss Sha, who you're all probably like, I ain't never seen that woman here before. That's because she's downstairs with y'all's kids, helping run that organization thing that's going on down there. It's pretty amazing what goes on downstairs. Y'all have to check it out sometime. But prior to me doing this full-time, I used to do that full-time with her. I always said that I was her number one volunteer. And yeah, that's right. And
so you all took him from me.
That's right. So, I mean, she's been doing children's ministry and family ministry for 20 plus years. And so she comes with a ton of experience. And I'm not going to let her talk too much right now because she's doing the main part of the teaching, which I think you're all going to love and enjoy. But again, we've been hot and heavy in this sermon series. We are a battleship. And we started off by talking about the difference between a cruise ship and a battleship. And we talked about those characteristics. And a cruise ship, which some of you have been on a cruise, some of you like me want to go on a cruise. A cruise ship is all about me and having fun and enjoying it and people waiting on us hand and foot, and it's all these different activities. You never have to leave the cruise ship because there is so much to do on a cruise ship. It's really about self-indulgence. And I'm not discouraging anybody from taking a cruise. So again, we talked about that last week. You can still take cruises. We're talking about spiritual cruises, okay? And but then we talked about the characteristics of a battleship. And a battleship is much different than a cruise ship. I mean, you just have the basic needs on a battleship, but the battleship is outfitted with everything it needs for war, for battle. And a cruise ship definitely is not. We talked about how a cruise ship has passengers and crew, and most of the time on a cruise ship you're going to have more passengers than you have crew members. But on a battleship you don't have any passengers. It is all crew members. Everyone has a specific job, a specific function in order to make that battleship operate, in order to fight the battle. It is all hands on deck all of the time. And that's really what we've been talking about with what kind of church are we? If you take it a spiritual cruise ship and a spiritual battleship, what kind of church are we? And I think we discovered that we all want to be a spiritual battleship because we are dealing with spiritual warfare. And with this spiritual warfare, we're fighting sin on a daily basis. And there are things going on in our lives that are tough. And some of them are of this earth and some of them are not of this earth. Some of them are Satan and his demons and bad spirits. And I know that freaks some of y'all out when you start talking about that kind of stuff. Sometimes we talk too much about how involved Satan and the demons are. Like if you stub your toe on the couch or the coffee table, that may not be Satan, okay? So you don't have, dang, get behind me, Satan! It's not, sometimes we give him too much credit, okay? But sometimes we don't give him enough credit for how much he's in our lives and causing some of the things that we're dealing with. And with that, there are spiritual casualties that are taking place all the time. There are people that are lost, that have not found God, that may be searching or may not even be searching. But we've discovered that we want to be a spiritual battleship, that we want to be all hands on deck, fighting this spiritual warfare and going out and saving the lost. And what I'm excited about today is Sha is going to be talking to us about how important it is to train and prepare to operate this spiritual battleship and to navigate this spiritual battle that we're in, because again, It is spiritual warfare, and we do deal with spiritual casualties all the time. So, Shay, what you got for us? Just take us right in there.
Well, I'll start by saying you talked about spiritual warfare, and a statistic came out within the last 10 years that's enough to scare anybody, whether you're in children's ministry, youth ministry, or just a parent, someone who loves kids, anywhere, shape, or form. It should scare you. And it is, the statistic says that 70 to 80% of kids and students who grew up in church will walk away from the church. And even worse, walk away from their faith. And that scares me. I don't know about you, but that scares me. 70 to 80% who grew up in church. And so if you don't think that spiritual warfare is alive and well, that should tell you the answer right there. And so that caused the church, the ecclesia, not just Greenville Christian Church, but the ecclesia to actually take a look at things a little differently when it came to children's ministry and youth ministry. Now, I want to start off by saying that I'll talk a lot about children's ministry, youth ministry, but you can insert you and where you are into this at any point in time. Because just because that's what I get paid to do doesn't mean that I don't want to help you guys understand as an adult what spiritual warfare is and what we're all going through. So,
Okay, and I know you've already said that you're talking about children's ministry. So some people may be going, first of all, I don't serve in children's ministry. I don't have no kids, or my kids are all grown up, so I can check out of this message. Should they?
well, let me tell you, you can check out of this message if you plan on dying tomorrow. Because otherwise, our children, our youth, are the next generation. They are our future leaders. They are the people that are going to be helping us make decisions as we get older, right? So you can't check out on this, because even if you aren't surrounded already by kids and youth, I pray that you love on the ones that we have here. So yeah, you can definitely apply it to your life. So as the church started to rethink all of these things, we had to figure out a few things. And one, we had to learn how to readjust our strategy, because if 70 to 80% were walking away, then something needed to happen, right? We had to figure out a way to deliver our messages that was a way that their ears would hear and retain it. And we had to consider about bringing the community together and how to impact and work with our families a little better. And then I would say, most importantly on there, how to leverage our influence. And so I'll kind of break all those down a little bit, but the church had to ask this really hard question. We had to seriously look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, if we want kids, students, adults to have an everlasting faith and a relationship with Christ, how do we expect non-believers to change if we, the church, aren't willing to change our ministries to meet them? And that was eye-opening, guys, because when I started in children's ministry, it looked a whole lot different than what it does now. And Sherry and Steve, they're the ones that kind of just brought me under their wings and taught me a lot of things. And it's changed a lot over 20 years. And so we had to look ourselves in the mirror, and we had to ask that question. If we want non-believers to change, then we better be ready to change. And so what happened was, as we started to consider this, we started also thinking, gosh, if 70 to 80% of these kids are walking away from church, that means, first of all, they were brought to church by parents. So we're wondering, are parents trying to find a way to be better parents, to be better spiritual leaders that they're called to be? So when we said this, we started doing the math, right? We started figuring out that church has been trying to do this for years, thousands of years, right? To reach someone to have a growing relationship with Christ. And we only get 40 hours in a given year. 40 hours. Now, I know, there's 52 weeks in a year, right?
We being who?
We, the church. Thank you.
Okay.
We, the church. There's 52 weeks, right? And you say, well, church is definitely longer than an hour when Bobby's preaching, right? So it's, how is it only 40?
Amen to that.
I always tell you, the Holy Spirit leaves the nursery a lot sooner than it does up here. So, can I get an amen, Miss Amy, back here in the nursery? Yep. So 40 40 hours, because you got to take into consideration vacations, sickness, just, grandma's having everybody over for dinner and it starts at 12 o'clock, so you better miss church and be there because grandma will get you. You got all those things that happen that cause us to miss a few of those weeks. So a good average is 40 hours a year to impact a child. 40 hours a year. And so that's kind of what 40 hours a year looks like. And then we started to do the math with parents, right? Parents have 3,000 hours. Untapped, I will tell you that. And what I mean by untapped is 3,000 hours that the kids are not at school, at daycare, preschool, any of those things, and not sleeping. Those times when you can actually have a conversation with your kid is about 3,000 hours.
A year.
A year.
Okay.
Compared to the church's 40. And 70 to 80% are walking away. So that made us seriously stand up, look at ourselves in the mirror and say, some things need to change. Because we can all agree that the most important thing that can happen in a person's life is their relationship with Jesus. And if that's the most important thing, then we had to change some things around, right? So what happened was a concept was born, and it's called Orange. And they started taking those 40 hours and putting a color to it, using yellow to represent the church for being the light of the world. And then they took the family and gave it a color red and said that they are the unconditional love that represents within the family. And they said, those two influences in a child's life is amazing, right? It's amazing. Kids get to come, they get to hear a message about Jesus, they get to hear these stories, they get to hear all these things. It's awesome. What the parents are doing to reach their kids, that's amazing. But what happens if we combine those two influences together? We get a greater impact and we create Orange, right? So it says, what if, as a church, we started to consider that every leader, every volunteer, and every parent were on the same page. We're on the same page with the same end in mind. And the end in mind being a relationship with Jesus, right? So what if we started actually considering this? What would it look like, right?
To me, that's all hands on deck. We've been talking about
Yeah.
that. That sounds like all hands on deck to me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we started to make some decisions, some really hard decisions of what needed to happen. And we needed to understand that we had to roll up our sleeves because it was going to take a lot of work to do and a lot of people to do it, right? And the big part that we needed to understand was adjusting our strategy, kind of coming up with a partnership was easy. That part was easy. Redefining our messages, we understood that with only 40 hours, we can't say everything. Mm-hmm. So we had to say the most important things. That was very, very important. That was easy to make those decisions. But the next level that I had talked about earlier was that bringing in the community, right? So we started to understand that there needed to be another adult in the life of a child saying the same thing that the parent was saying. And I'm going to say that again because if you know me, you have already heard this probably before I say it downstairs. Everybody on my team has heard me say this 100 times till they're blue in the face, or till I'm blue in the face. But every child needs another adult in their life saying the same thing that the parent is saying. Because here's what we found out, okay? So there's a pioneer in family ministry. His name is Reggie Joyner, and he's actually the one that was brilliant enough to come up with this whole orange concept. And he shared a story with us about his daughter. And this story was, his daughter was a high schooler, and she was on a basketball team playing, and she had her best game she's ever had. And she actually scored, I can't remember now if it was 7 or 8 3-pointers in a game. I get confused because Kentucky just did 7, so yeah. So I think it might have been 7 or 8. But anyway, he scored 7 or 8 3-pointers in a game, and he was in the stands, and he is just hooting and hollering. He is just having a good old time and can't wait for the game to be over so he can run down, get to his daughter, wrap his arms around her, and just tell her how much he was proud of her, and just wanted to reiterate how practice was so important, and she saw that, and this was the result of all that practice. He just couldn't wait to tell her all these things. And he gets down there, and he starts to just tell her, I'm just so proud of you, Hannah. You just did an amazing job. And he's just going on and on and on. And she goes, yeah, but what did Coach Brown say? And he goes, well, what difference does it make what Coach Brown said? I'm your father, and I just told you you did a really, 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 really good job.
Right.
But yet I know you love me. What did Coach Brown say? Kids are looking for that. There's a point in their life where they are wanting validation from another adult. They need that validation from another adult. And so it was very, very important for us to understand that we needed to elevate community in order to make sure that that happened, putting another adult in their life. And so we understood that community helps us to grow. And we do that through small groups, through living groups. I know a lot of you adults in here are a part of a living group or a Bible study. I looked up on stage today and saw that this was a little community in itself, our worship team. We need community, right? People need that. And I would even venture to say, and I know this is cliche, but the whole we need a village, we need a village to raise our families is more true now than it ever was before. And I've seen a couple of stories like this before, but I just recently saw this week on Facebook a story that reminded me why a village is needed. And it was an actual single mother who was in college. And she emailed her professor to say that she wasn't going to be able to make it that day to class because her babysitter had a change of plans and she was going to have to miss. Wanted to know if she could get the notes from him. And he pleaded with her to come to class and to bring her baby.
Wow.
And she did. She trusted him enough to do that. And then there's video of him actually giving his lecture, holding her baby the entire class. And then they interviewed him afterwards, and he said, they're like, what did you do that for? And he goes, because it takes a village. It takes a village. And let me tell you something. If you haven't identified this already throughout the Battleship series, you guys are the village. You guys are who our families, if you do not have a child that's downstairs or next door, you guys are their village. They need other adults speaking into their life right now.
Because I can think of, when we first started coming here over 20 years ago, and our kids were smaller, Jordan and Chastity and Jasmine were little. I mean, really little. And we started coming here, and listen, we were seeking God. We were, trying to figure out what that meant, this whole relationship with Christ thing and all this stuff. We were trying to figure it out. And we needed help with the kids, all right? Because we didn't want them to grow up to be like antichrists and stuff like that. And so we needed help. And because we didn't have all the God answers and the Bible answers, and we just weren't familiar with that stuff. And let's face it, we were doing the parent thing for the first time with our kids. So it was awesome, the teachings. It wasn't so much that we just dropped the kids off and said, y'all teach them, and then we'll just pray that they grow up to be good, right? But it was us learning with the church. It was us learning downstairs by participating in the kids stuff and the family stuff that was going on. It was us learning from the people that had already done the parent thing or was ahead of us doing the parent thing. And was further along than us spiritually. We were spiritual babies, okay?
We were both baptized here, so yes.
That's right. And, people came along and helped us. So we've received it at the baby stages of our family. So we feel very strongly about this. So
Absolutely. And, again, just having that consistency of another adult in the life of a kid. Because what you have to understand, parents, I know you think your kids are like awesome and they're going to tell you everything. They're not. They're not. Another story that Reggie had shared was his son, who started the adventure of dating. And he had a conversation with his son, sat him down. He said, listen, son, I realize you're dating this young lady now and you're gone a lot. You're kind of like not only physically gone, but you're gone when you're at dinner. Like we don't even know what you're thinking about anymore. He goes, so I need you to tell me who this girl is, what you guys are doing, where you're going. And his son looked at him and he goes, no, I'm not telling you that. And he said, no, I'm the father, and you are going to tell me exactly what I need to know. And he goes, I'm not going to tell you because you are my father. And so he goes into church the next morning and he's talking to his pastor, which happens to be Andy Stanley. And he walks to his office and he goes, "You're never going to believe this." And he said, "I had this conversation with my son last night and I told him I need him to tell me where he's going, what he's doing, and who he's talking to." And he goes, and he said no because I was his dad. And Reggie says, and Andy in his grace, or his gift of grace and mercy, says, "Did you tell your dad everything?" So he went back home, had another conversation with his son, and said, "Okay, so I get it that you're not going to tell me everything, but I need to know who you are going to talk to." And the thing that he realized is that his kids were attached to their small group leader at church, and that they had this consistent, organic relationship that had grew over the years, that he knew he trusted that person and that individual that had been present in his son's life for so long, that he knew he could trust that he was sharing the same kind of values that he was as a dad. And so it's very, very important. And I'll tell you how much consistency, consistent leaders matter, because Chastity and Ryan and Ray are next door every single Sunday. They're never in here. They're always over there because they believe in your kids and your teenagers and the next generation here, and that they decided that consistency was more important. So consistency downstairs is hard. With one service, it's very, very hard. But we work really hard at doing the best we can with that because we think your kids are worth it.
Yeah, think about yourselves in your own life, and think of people, adults in your life that had a huge impact on you when you were growing up. That weren't your parents, okay? But think of who those people were that had a huge impact on you. And that's really what we're talking about, because they probably invested time, took time to build that relationship with you, listened to you, taught you awesome things. But I think all of us probably have that person in our lap.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing that we had to look at as a church was how to reactivate the family, right? Because one thing that we know is that every parent needs a church community that's going to help them, walk alongside them, to allow them to be the spiritual leaders they're called to be. And every kid deserves to have a parent who is going to lead them into a relationship with Jesus Christ. So because of that, and because we realize that we don't have a lot of time, and the parents had the most time, then as a church we needed to figure out a way to partner with them, to give them the tools that they needed in order to have an impact on their families. And so here was the hardest part that I had to come to the realization of. And I'll say this, I'm going to say this twice here, because y'all might fire me after it. We need to, as a church, do more for families than we do for kids. And I'm going to say that again. As a church, we need to do more for families than we do for kids. And what I mean by that is I can have a greater impact on the life of a family in those 3,000 hours that they get versus the 40 that I get. I am not saying these aren't important. And you'll hear me say that here in a little bit, that this needs to be the catalyst for it. But if we do believe that in 100 years from now, the most important thing that matters is the relationship a person has with Jesus Christ, and there are 3,000 hours that I can walk alongside a parent, that's where the greatest impact is going to happen. And so we have to reactivate the family. We have to help give them the tools. We know that they're called to be the spiritual leaders of their children, but sometimes that doesn't mean they have all the tools they need. So the church needs to figure out how to be that resource for them. So we have lots of resources. We have lots already, and we have lots that are going to be coming. And I am so excited about that because one of the coolest parts that we brought about, it's probably about 3 years ago, was something called Married People. And I love the concept of married people, because married people is an opportunity for us to sow into our marriages before they're in trouble. We said as a church, a lot of times the pastors were hearing a lot from our families, our married couples, when they're struggling. And we said, well, what if we took 2 steps before that? What if we helped it be proactive about it to help them before it gets to that point? And so married people's coming back. At some point or another, it's coming back. So be watching for that. We did things like the backyard, where it was an opportunity to get families in the same room together, because we get in here on Sunday mornings and we drop the kids off downstairs, and you guys come up here, students go out there, we're all in different rooms, and it doesn't create for an environment where they're actually getting to talk about the same message that they all heard at the same time. So we created the backyard. It's our goal to get that back in here. So we've got lots of different influences like that we can do, but we have lots of other tools that we can give our parents as well. I'll talk about one of those here in a little bit, but be watching for that. We're going to have some open houses where you guys can actually come downstairs and meet the leaders and figure out ways that we can help you guys. But the last thing that we needed to do was to leverage our influence. And I know when you and I were kind of talking about this, you were like, explain that to me. And here's the best way I know how to explain it to you. There was a movie, I think it came out, I think I looked it up, 2006, and it was Kevin Costner was in this movie, and it's called The Guardian, and it's about training of Navy SEALs. Anybody seen this movie? You know what I'm talking about?
Coast Guard. Yeah, that were also Navy SEALs.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know. I know the movie's called The Guardian.
Anyway, go ahead.
I know that part.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not good at no branch of service thing. Anyway, what I do know about this movie is that they are they're learning. These guys are learning how to be Navy SEALs, right? And so there's lots of instructors there. Kevin Costner is one of those instructors, and he has all of the recruits in this warehouse that he's brought in this pool that he's set up, and it's filled with ice. And the other instructors come in, and they're like, what are you doing? These kids are supposed to be in class right now. They're supposed to be learning about hypothermia. Right. And Kevin Costner says, give them 5 minutes, and they're going to know. So we had to understand that it's not always just the message that they hear. We had to give them opportunities to experience that for themselves. We had to give them opportunities in order for them to put their faith into practice and to give their faith away. We have young kids that are on this stage sharing their skills, their gifts, and their talents to lead all of us into a time of worship. And they're giving their faith away. Every time they get up here and pick up these instruments, they are giving their faith away. Everything that they've learned in the classroom and at home about their God and their relationship with Christ, they're giving it away. And we have to understand that if we don't give them more opportunities to give their faith away, they may walk into that 70 to 80% where they're walking away from their faith instead of giving it away. And so we create lots of different opportunities for our students to serve here. These guys not only serve on stage, they serve as small group leaders downstairs with our younger kids. They are the cutest things downstairs with the younger kids because they give our adults a little bit of energy break because they will get on the floor and play with them. Where some of our adults are like, I'll let you do that, you little young pup there. So they're awesome downstairs. They're awesome as greeters. They're awesome at doing all kinds of things. If you, I know Maddie goes with you, Melissa, right, to the love transformation. She's given her faith away every time she does that. And so we have to create opportunities for them to do that, right? And back in the day, I'm not even joking with you, back in the day, when I went to Bible college, and there's no colleges around here for children's ministry, so I had to go for youth ministry. And these were 4 philosophies of ministry that they said, as far more so for youth, obviously, but it was really for the church in general. And it was the first one was our job was to stop people from going to hell. That was our job. The second one was to keep them from raising hell. I saw a police officer walking here. You can probably say amen to that. That's what we were supposed to do, right? Or we were supposed to, the fire and brimstone thing. This is the kind of church that I went to when I was a little kid, was scare the hell out of them. That was the next ideal of how to do it. But again, we take a step back, look ourselves in the mirror and said, what if it's not that? What if it's to give them the weapons they need to charge hell? Because we said there's a spiritual warfare going on, right? We said this is a battleship. This is the battle that they're in. This is the battle they're fighting. And if we can give them the tools they need to go out there and fight that battle, to give their faith away, then maybe we can run the risk of not run the risk of these kids walking away from it.
Sure.
So that was really, really cool. The other thing that we notice when we allow them to serve and allow them to give their faith away is the power of them celebrating the win. What I mean by that is you can be a fan, you can be a parent, you can be a cheerleader. You know, you're all watching the same game, right, from the sidelines. You're all in it. You know when you're watching your ball games, you know you're all excited and you're hooting and hollering. Y'all know y'all do that. And you get so excited when they win the game, right? But no one is more excited than the kids that are playing the game. And if that wasn't evident this week when the number 16 seed beat the number 1 seed for the first time, I mean, that was evidence right there, right? Those kids were ecstatic because they were invested in it. They were the ones that got to feel that. And when we leverage the opportunity of the influence our kids have, they get to feel that win. They get to be a part of it. We said the kids are the next generation to this church of leaders. They're kind of already the leaders. They kind of already are. So this is not anything new, guys. Nothing is new about this. Moses actually charged the Israelites with this. And I think we have the scripture reference we can put up here, and it's in Deuteronomy chapter 6, starting at verse 4, and it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates." There's something that we already do downstairs. They're called God time cards and parent cue cards. And if you have an elementary student, your kids probably come home with these every day, or every Sunday, I should say, and they probably get lost in the fellowship hall, and I pick them up later on, or they're lost in your car or whatever. The cool part, guys, is they came out with an app for this. So you can actually download this app on your phone. There you go, the Parent Q app, and get this and be paper-free from now on. But what I wanted to draw your attention to on that is that these are the Parent Q cards. And what this does is this says we have to use Sunday as a catalyst. It needs to be the beginning and not the end of the week, not the afterthought. We need to use Sunday as a springboard for our families so that they can have an opportunity to take what the kids have learned here on Sunday morning and spring off of that for the rest of the week. So that Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, they all repeat Sunday. So it gives us opportunities like this says week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And on the back, it says morning time, drive time, meal time, bedtime. Did that sound familiar from what Moses said? Talk to them when you're at home. Meal time. When you get up in the morning, morning time. When you're driving down the road. I think the Bible said when you're walking down the road, times have changed. Bedtime, when you lay them down. These give you a little activity that you can do at each of those times throughout the week so that you can help your kids have a faith that's every day and not just a faith on Sunday. Yep. Now, I'm going to sit here and say, and again, it's why y'all fire me or send me back downstairs, but I'm just going to go out here and say this. I know there's a lot of us sitting in this room that have a faith on Sunday only. We come in here on Sunday mornings to get recharged. And we don't do anything about our faith throughout the week to recharge it and repeat it. And we got to do a better job of that as parents.
Yeah, because that used to be us once upon a time.
I sit there saying I'm preaching to the choir right here.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in all the busyness of our lives and to do that and not really understand what it means to have an everyday faith. Certainly as parents, that's the last thing they need to figure out. It's like, I have to do all their homework with them. I know that's crazy enough as it is, and I'm running them to practice, and I'm picking them up from daycare, and I'm doing all of these different things. I don't have time to come up with another thing for them to do to strengthen their faith.
Right.
And so we said, as a church, what can we do to help with that? What can we give you the tool that all you have to do is when you're eating dinner with them and sitting across the table, you can say these things, or you can read this particular story when you're laying them down at night. So we wanted to give them opportunities to do that.
Yeah, because real quick, I mean, we had to decide, early in our parenting, how much we were going to let the kids do and participate in. Because I remember that it got to a point where we were running them everywhere to everything because they were in everything. And then you don't have time for God. You don't have time for God time cards and parent cue apps and stuff like that. And then we started thinking, we got this so backwards. We're so busy trying to raise our kid to be the next Michael Jordan, LeBron James, whatever, Serena Williams. I mean, the list goes on, that we don't think about the eternal stuff.
Yeah.
We don't think about eternity. And it took kind of a life change, and it was still difficult to balance that and work that in and those types of things. But when I sit and look at this parent cue card and the God time cards or whatever, look, as grandparents, this is an excellent tool for you as grandparents, right? To also have that dialogue and reinforce that with your kids. If you don't have any kids, but you just love the kids that run around here, why not get this information, and then when you bump into them at in the fellowship hall or wherever, or when you're at small groups and the kids are there, you know what they're learning. You know what they're talking about, so that you can reinforce that. Again, it takes a village, and the more that we talk about it, and that it's part of just normal life, it's part of our culture, it's like breathing, then we don't wait until we're all grown up and we go, I don't know anything about the Bible, I don't understand Scripture, or any of those kinds of things, because we don't take the time to. So that's kind of the challenge that, again, we have to decide, are we passengers, kicked back in our chair with our drink and an umbrella in it? Or are we active crew members, all hands on deck, fighting the spiritual battle?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The hard part about loving kids so much is understanding that we're playing for keeps, right? And playing for keeps is kind of 6 different little categories here, and I'll start with the first one. The first one is time over time. These marbles here, anybody guess how many? You probably don't here see it. Can you see it?
No, I can't.
How many marbles y'all think is in here? Shout it out. 400? 1,200.
376.
376. Specific. 375.
$1.
$1. There are actually 936 marbles in here. And you know what those 936 marbles represent? I'm going to totally freak you parents out real quick here. There are 936 weeks from the time your child is born until they graduate college. That's all you got. That's the time you have to impact a kid. 936 weeks. By the time they're 9 years old, it's like 400. It starts ticking away.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Isn't there something on the website or the app that
There is an
keeps track of
app.
that? All right,
Yeah,
what's it do?
I had it. I got rid of it because I didn't like it. I'm just kidding. It's sad. You see all these parents who have kids that have birthdays, and Chastity just did this yesterday with Caden's birthday. He just turned 2, and she's like, where did the time go? Dude, they tick by fast. And this little app allows you to put your kid's birthday in there, and it starts counting down for you. Every week you pull it up and it's like, I got this many. Like, nope, I do not need to know that. But 936. 936. Here's why I tell you this and why you need to know this. Because when we realize how much time we have left, we make that time count. And if you don't believe me, I know most of you, me included, do not want to know this information, but if for some reason I was given the information, I'm 46 years old, if for some reason I was given the information that I am going to die when I'm 50 years old, you better believe that the next 4 years are going to be awesome. I'm going to make them count. I'm going to have conversations with people that I've been putting off. I'm going to forgive people that I should have forgiven a long time ago. I'm going to make those relationships count. I'm going to do a lot of things because I know how much time I have left.
That's right.
So, time over time makes history worth repeating. And then the next one was love over time, right? Seriously, like, we can all agree on this, right? Love is probably the best thing that ever happened to any of us, right? When kids know how much they're loved, then they start to believe that they are worth something. And I don't personally have Instagram, but this is the horror stories I hear about Instagram, is how much of a comparison trap people fall into, especially our teenagers. When it comes to Instagram, they can just look at any picture or Pinterest or any of those things. This is what they're supposed to look like. This is what they're supposed to be. And their Heavenly Father created them perfect. And when we can help them understand that by loving on them, showing them love over time, they start to believe it, and then they start to believe in their worth, right?
Yeah. And what I love about this church and this crew is, yes, parents love on their kids, and definitely, but what I love to see is when someone is dealing with a kid, and it's not their kid, it's somebody else's kid, and they run up to them and they hug on them and love on them.
You're stealing my point for point number 4.
Oh, dang, my bad. Go ahead.
Keep going.
No, I'll shut up. I know how this goes. I know when I'm supposed to stop. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. So the next one, I didn't finish up with it, right? Love over time is the one thing that matters the most, right? Helps to build their worth. So the next thing is words over time. Words over time. Words help kids see themselves and see God. Words over time, right? They probably aren't going to care what you have to say about them until they know that you care about them. The words that you say about them, you could pass them in the hallway and just say, that's a cute little dress. But if you tell them every single week they look cute, they start to believe it. Words over time matter, right? Words over time matter because it can impact the direction of their life. So then the next one is stories over time. Stories over time, like, it is so cool. Downstairs, if you haven't had the opportunity to see this, go down in the purple room, and there is a ginormous poster that's hanging up in there, and it's called God's Story. Stories over time help kids connect to God's big story. There's a timeline on the bottom of it. And each week we're talking about these stories in the Bible, and they seem so disconnected. You know, I do this. I don't know about you. When I read some things in the Bible and I'm like, yeah, but times have changed so much. I mean, that's not how it is now. You know, it can be a disconnect from God's Word. But when we invest in stories over time and help them see how their story fits into God's big story, then it makes time matter, right? So stories over time help shape their perspective. And then tribes over time, which is what you were referring to, let the cat out of the bag. Sorry. Tribes over time is because people need people. Yep. Right? People need people. We talked about that. Small groups, living groups, that village mentality. We have kids that come here on Sunday morning, and I watch them. And I will point out a couple of them. I know I love to see Ashley Robinson go find Miss Helen. Mm-hmm. She loves Miss Helen. She loves her some Miss Helen. Mm-hmm. Miss Helen is not related to her, or at least I don't think she is. But they have a connection. They love each other, right? Tanner Brown finds Miss Judy on Sunday morning. He can't leave here until he gives Miss Judy a hug. This is a teenage boy. And he's a lover, though, not a fighter. He hugs everybody. Love me some Tanner. But my point is, these people are not related. They're not going to find mom or dad or grandma. They're finding someone here who has invested their time, their love, their words, their stories over time, and they've made a connection with that person.
Yep.
And these kids are developing their worth because you all have reached out to love on them, and they're not even yours. And that's so cool. And then the last one is fun over time, right? Y'all heard them downstairs just a minute ago. They're playing with balloons. They're trying to figure out their Bible verse in order with the balloons downstairs, so they had to pop them.
Yeah, because the Bible verses were in the balloons,
Inside,
right?
yes,
So.
yes. Here's what we know about fun over time, right? We can tell these kids we love them all the time. But until they know we like them, doesn't matter. Big people are supposed to love little people. They know that. You're my mom. You're my dad. You're my leader. You're supposed to. But when you have fun with them, when you laugh with them, when you play with them, when they see that you enjoy being around them, then they understand that you really do love them. And so we have fun over time.
Yeah, and Ryan talked about that several weeks ago when he preached. He talked about getting down on his hands and knees in their world and spending time with them, and just how special that was.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's how we have reinvented what we do, because understanding, again, that 70 to 80% of the kids are walking away, we had to do something. We had to make changes. And again, we had to ask that hard question. If we want non-believers to change, then we as the church had to be willing to change the way we did things. And so that's how we've changed it. It seriously takes a village. Again, this isn't a recruiting, get up here and say, I need help up here, but I do need help downstairs. So if that's something that you're interested in, come see me. But my challenge to you guys is, just like I was just talking about Miss Helen and Miss Judy, just love on these kids, man. Just speak into their lives each and every time you see them. Make it a point to go out there. Make it a point to go out in our youth building and check out what they're doing and just pop your head in there and see them. But love on them, because we've got to come together as the community, their community. They need us. So we just got to come together. And this is part of the battleship mentality. We have to fight this battle for them, because they're worth it.
That's right.
They're worth it.
That's right. I appreciate you helping me with the message this week and delivering a powerful message that I hope challenges all of us. Again, all hands on deck, that this is all hands on deck all of the time, all of us.